The studio lights were warm. Too warm. Tucker Carlson smiled with the kind of confidence that had carried him through countless interviews. The set of Tucker Tonight was as polished as ever. A massive American flag shimmered behind him. Tonight's guest? A controversial figure to many, but that's what Fox wanted. Ibrahim Traoré, the 36-year-old president of Burkina Faso, often branded a rebel, militant, or worse, was flown into New York for what was advertised as a bridge-building media exchange. The world had seen Traoré before, but not like this. Tucker expected an easy play. Ask about Russia, China, coups, and African instability. Maybe even corner Traoré with a smug joke or two. But as Traoré sat down, eyes steady, lips tight, a storm was already forming behind those eyes. The producers whispered nervously. They had underestimated this young African soldier-turned-leader. As the countdown reached 0 and the show went live to over 14 million viewers, Tucker opened with a rehearsed grin. So, President Traoré, tell America, why should we trust a man who took power with a gun? There was a pause. Then Traoré slowly leaned forward, and what he said next would shake the entire world. Silence. Heavy silence. Like the room had forgotten to breathe. Traoré didn't flinch. His voice, calm but edged with iron, sliced through the studio. Why should you trust a man who took power with a gun? Ask yourself, how did America get hers? The crew froze. Carlson blinked. Traoré wasn't playing the game. You call it democracy when Washington imposes leaders on us, but when my people reject your puppets, suddenly it's a coup. He looked directly into the camera, into America. Since 1960, how many African leaders have been killed after saying no to the West? Lumumba, Sankara, Gaddafi. And you want to ask me about guns? Somewhere in a control room, an intern dropped her headset. Social media exploded. Viewers began recording. Clips hit Twitter, TikTok, Telegram. Traoré Uncensored began trending before the segment was even halfway through. Tucker cleared his throat, tried to interrupt. But Traoré kept going. In Burkina Faso, we found schools with no roofs, clinics with no medicine, and foreign troops parked in luxury hotels while our children die. That's your democracy? His voice trembled, not with fear, but with centuries of fury. Tears formed in the eyes of some staff. Even Carlson's usual arrogance cracked. And this was only the beginning. Phones buzzed across the world. In Detroit, a single mother paused mid-dinner to stare at her TV. In Lagos, a university student started recording the screen. In Paris, an exiled African activist shouted, "Yes, finally!" Traoré's voice was still calm but filled with fire. America, your media has lied to you. They said we are savages, that Africa needs saving, but who really needs saving, us, or a system that profits off our pain? He lifted a photograph, a child from Dori, malnourished, holding a rusted spoon. She died while foreign soldiers were guarding gold mines. There were no cuts, no edits. The rawness bled through the camera. Then he said something that shattered every wall between nations. To the American people, I do not hate you. I weep for you. You too have been lied to, manipulated. Your kindness weaponized against others. Your taxes feed wars you never voted for. You think you are free, but you are prisoners of silence. The live chat exploded. He's telling the truth. I'm crying. This man is a hero. I've never seen Tucker this shaken. Even Tucker Carlson sat stiff, eyes darting for help. The control room panicked. Then, without warning, Fox News pulled the plug. The screen went black. And just like that, history had been made. The moment the screen went black, Twitter caught fire. Fox cut the feed? What are they hiding? Replay that Traoré segment. People need to see this. Within minutes, bootleg screen recordings of the interrupted live show started going viral. Viewers uploaded clips with shaky phone cams, TikTok edits, stitched reactions. One video of Traoré saying, "You think you are free?" hit 30 million views in 4 hours. Carlson didn't return to air that night. Fox News released a vague tweet. "We experienced technical difficulties during our live segment. We'll be back tomorrow." But no one believed that. Inside Fox, chaos reigned. The producers screamed at one another in a sealed room. "Why didn't anyone vet this guy better?" an executive barked. But someone else whispered, "No, we did. We just thought he wouldn't dare." Meanwhile, Traoré was already gone. Not escorted by agents. Not silenced. He walked out of the studio, surrounded by 3 aides, his fists clenched, his eyes watery. Not from anger, but from decades of buried grief. Back at his hotel, his phone buzzed. One of the texts simply read, "You're not alone. America heard you." And for the first time in days, he smiled. By morning, he was everywhere. News outlets scrambled to react. CNN called it unprecedented. BBC labeled it confrontational. Fox News scrubbed the segment from their website completely, but the internet had already taken over. In Brooklyn, a high school class stopped their lesson to watch the clip. In rural Arkansas, an elderly white farmer posted a TikTok. "I don't know much about Burkina Faso, but this man just made me cry. He spoke more truth in 5 minutes than our leaders have in 50 years. By noon, hashtags exploded. Traoré Truth. Africa Unchained. Let him speak. Tears for truth. Even some American soldiers posted anonymous videos, nodding in silent support. Back in Ouagadougou, Traoré's mother sat with a small radio in her lap, replaying her son's voice from clips neighbors brought. She whispered through tears, "That's my son. That's the child I raised." A breaking CNN headline read, "Fox News pulls viral African interview. Viewers demand full release." The world wasn't asking anymore. They were demanding. And somewhere in Washington, a State Department official muttered, "We underestimated him. This is a problem." But for Ibrahim Traoré, it was no longer about politics. It was about truth. 3 days after the broadcast, while sitting alone in his hotel room, Traoré received an email. The sender, a U.S. veteran. Subject line, "Forgive me. Sir, I served 2 tours in Africa. I was told we were helping, building, protecting, but now I see. We weren't building. We were taking. I saw villages burned, women cry, children die in silence. I never had the words for what I saw. But when you spoke on that show, I broke down. In front of my wife, in front of my kids. I cried like a child. I want to say this. You spoke for people we silenced. You spoke for us too, for every American who knows deep down that something is very, very wrong. Thank you. I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'm grateful you told the truth." A former U.S. Marine. Traoré read it twice. His hands trembled. He closed his eyes and whispered something in Moray, his mother tongue. Let their hearts awaken. He didn't cry for himself. He cried for all the leaders killed, truths buried, and people who had waited too long to be heard. The fire had started. Now it was unstoppable. Somewhere inside a quiet office at Fox News, a junior producer named Elena, just 25, fresh from journalism school, replayed the footage for the 7th time. Her headphones trembled with the sound of Traoré's voice. When he said, "You think you are free?" She clenched her jaw. Tears welled up again. Elena wasn't supposed to feel this. She had grown up believing America stood for truth. Her father, an immigrant from El Salvador, always said, "America gave us a voice." But now, The silence around the Traoré interview screamed louder than truth. She opened the internal Slack chat. All the producers were forbidden from mentioning the segment. It had been renamed Episode X in the files. Suddenly, her inbox lit up. A message from an anonymous coworker. "You cried too, didn't you?" Elena didn't reply. Instead, she downloaded the full segment, illegally, from the archive. That night, she uploaded it from her private laptop. Title: What Fox News Doesn't Want You to See, Ibrahim Traoré, full uncut. In 3 hours, it hit 12 million views. In 7 hours, Fox News sent copyright claims. But by then, it had been mirrored to over 600 accounts worldwide. The world refused to let it vanish. As night fell over New York, something extraordinary began to happen. In Harlem, where jazz once fought against silence, people gathered. At first it was just 5 or 6, then dozens, then hundreds, all holding candles, all wearing black. A big screen was set up on a basketball court, looping the uncut Traoré video. A black Vietnam veteran stepped forward. His voice cracked. They tried to bury the truth, but it rose up anyway. The crowd hummed with emotion. Some wiped away tears. Some clutched their children. From the speakers, Traoré's voice echoed, "You think you are free?" A little boy tugged at his father's jacket and whispered, "Daddy, are we free?" The man, usually so sure of everything, looked down and didn't answer. His eyes brimmed with water. He just pulled his son close. One young woman live-streamed the vigil. She said through tears, "I didn't even know where Burkina Faso was last week. But now I feel like this man is my brother." The screen behind her flickered with Traoré's final words. "Africa does not need saving. Africa needs respect." And as the candles swayed in the wind, Harlem stood in complete silence. Far from Harlem, in a small home in the Congo, an old woman sat on a wooden stool. Her name was Marie Sankara, niece of Thomas Sankara, the revolutionary who was assassinated in 1987. When Traoré's segment reached her phone, she watched it alone, whispering prayers. As tears ran down her cheeks, she picked up her pen. She wrote a letter. "President Traoré, I do not know if you will ever read this, but I want you to know, your voice brought my uncle back to life. When you looked into that camera and spoke our truth, it felt like Sankara was speaking again. My family has lived in silence. We watched his dreams die. We watched lies win. But now, the truth breathes again. They will try to silence you too. But remember this, the world is listening now. The spirits are watching, and the fire you started cannot be put out. Stand strong, stand free. Marie Sankara." She folded the paper and handed it to a journalist friend flying to New York. Within days, that letter made it into Traoré's hands, and when he read it, he didn't speak for 5 minutes. He just wept. The email arrived at 3:42 a.m. Its subject line was simple: "I need to speak." Sender: Senator Joseph Connolly, Democrat from Ohio. He was no radical, a quiet figure in Washington, often neutral, rarely loud. But after watching Traoré's full interview, something inside him cracked. At dawn, Senator Connolly held a press conference. He looked visibly shaken. No teleprompter, no PR team, just raw truth. What I saw, what we all saw, was not just a foreign leader giving a speech. It was a mirror to what we've become. And for the first time in years, I wept. Journalists were stunned. He continued, "If you have a heart, if you believe in justice, watch the full video. Then ask yourself, why did they cut the feed?" Later that day, Connolly posted the uncut Traoré clip to his official X account. He pinned it with one line, "Let this truth live." In 24 hours, it was reposted by celebrities, activists, teachers, even retired CIA officials. A retired diplomat whispered to his grandson, "He just cracked the foundation." Traoré shattered the silence that held the world hostage for decades. The silence was gone. Now, even Washington couldn't look away. Across hundreds of American high schools and colleges, something unexpected happened. Students walked out. It began at Howard University. At 11 a.m. sharp, students poured into the courtyard, holding handmade signs. "Let Africa speak. Ibrahim Traoré. Truth. Fox News can't kill the truth." Videos of the walkout flooded social media. Within hours it spread. Harvard, Spelman, UCLA, Yale, Ohio State. At a middle school in Detroit, an 8th grader named Tasha gave an emotional speech. She held her phone up with Traoré's video paused on his tearful eyes. "He cried for us. He cried for every country that was lied to. Now it's our turn to cry for him and stand up." Her teacher joined her, holding back tears. Outside the White House, 3,000 people gathered in total silence. They didn't chant, they didn't scream. They just stood, holding candles, wearing shirts that read, "The truth was blacked out." Cable news scrambled to catch up, but the people weren't waiting for permission anymore. They had seen too much. They had felt too much. And no one, no network, no government, no force could erase what had been spoken. The invitation came in the form of a sealed envelope delivered to Traoré's hotel suite. Embossed seal, United Nations General Assembly. Inside, "You are invited to address the General Assembly of the United Nations in an open session on global equity, sovereignty, and post-colonial policy. This address will be aired live. The world is listening." Traoré held the letter in shaking hands. His advisor asked softly, "Will you accept?" He nodded once. "Yes, but this time, I will not speak to leaders. I will speak to their children." That same night he rehearsed nothing. He didn't write a script. Instead, he called his mother in Ouagadougou. When she picked up, she asked, "What are you going to say, my son?" He paused, then whispered, "I'm going to remind them that they were human once." And from that moment, something shifted again. This wasn't just about politics. This was a spiritual reckoning. A global pause. The world didn't just want a speech. They needed a healing, and Ibrahim Traoré was about to deliver it. The chamber was silent. United Nations General Assembly Hall, New York City. A place of polished speeches and shallow claps. But today, it felt different. The air was thick. World leaders sat up straighter. Translators leaned in. Camera crews, normally mechanical, found themselves nervous. Then, Ibrahim Traoré walked in. No suit, no tie. Just a simple, traditional Burkina tunic, brown and white cotton, worn and honest. He held no script, no paper, just pain and truth. He stood before the marble podium and looked up, not at the delegates, but into the balconies, where students, activists, and survivors sat. Then he began, "I am not here to accuse. I am here to remind you that before you wore suits, you were children. That before you spoke of prophets, you played in dirt. That before you held guns, you held your mother's hand. I ask you now, when did we stop feeling?" Gasps echoed. Silence fell like snow. A delegate from Sweden dropped his pen. The translator for Japan wiped her eyes. And in the far back, a young South Sudanese delegate collapsed into tears. This was no longer a speech. It was a funeral for our humanity. Traoré stepped away from the podium. Then, something unplanned happened. He walked off the main stage, directly into the crowd. Security stiffened. Cameras followed. He approached an African grandmother seated in the back row, a UN observer from Senegal. Her hands trembled. She looked at him, stunned. He knelt beside her, took her hand. "My grandmother," he said softly into the mic, "they erased your story, but your voice still lives in me." The room was frozen. The woman began to cry. "They stole our gold, our sons, our dreams," she whispered, "but not our spirit." A soft, haunting hum rose from the balconies, an old African lullaby sung by students. It was unplanned, uncoordinated, but perfect. Traoré closed his eyes. "To the leaders here," he said, standing again, voice cracking. "You inherited power, but they inherited the wounds." He pointed to the students, the children of war, of minds of silence. "And they will inherit your shame if you do not change." No one moved, no one clapped, because applause felt insulting after what had just been heard. The ancestors had spoken, and the world had no defense. Outside it began to rain, a heavy, holy kind of rain, slapping the glass dome of the UN like a cleansing drumbeat. Inside, Ibrahim Traoré turned for one last time. He looked across the assembly. His final words came slowly, barely a whisper. "I do not speak English like a poet. I am not trained in your schools of power. But I carry something deeper than policy. I carry the memory of stolen names, the silence of looted graves, the voice of my people, and that is enough." Then he bowed his head, and for a moment, just one terrifying, holy second, the world stood still. And then a sound rose, one clap, then two, then the whole chamber, standing, applauding, crying. Even the skeptical U.S. ambassador stood, tears on her cheek. It was not politics anymore. It was a reckoning. Reporters wrote nothing. Cameras kept rolling, but no one posed. And above the echo of claps, the only sound that truly remained was a small voice in the gallery. A child, whispering, "That man speaks like the sky." 3 days after the UN speech, something surreal happened in Burkina Faso's embassy in Washington, D.C. It started with one envelope, then 10, then hundreds. By day's end, 12,438 handwritten letters had arrived. Not emails, not DMs, letters. From schoolchildren in Iowa, war veterans in Texas, nurses in Chicago, and even inmates from California prisons. Some addressed him as Brother Ibrahim, my president, the truth speaker. One 14-year-old wrote, "I didn't know where Burkina Faso was last week. Now, it's the country that made my mom cry. Thank you for showing us what bravery sounds like." An elderly woman from Mississippi added, "I lived through segregation. I've never seen a black man speak like that," and silenced the world. Traoré, still in New York, read them one by one, tears streaking his face. His translator had stopped translating. He didn't need the words anymore. He could feel them. That night, he whispered into a voice note to his team, "They called me a rebel, a radical, a danger. But in their quiet homes, the people are writing me like a son. Maybe truth has finally crossed the ocean." Meanwhile, in a heavily guarded compound in Maine, Tucker Carlson sat alone. The backlash had reached him. The segment had been yanked. But people weren't silent. A former Fox News editor leaked the raw, uncut footage. It landed online and ignited a second wave even stronger than the first. Tucker stared at his desk. On it, one letter, unmarked, no address, just his name. Inside, "You asked him to come. You expected a soundbite. You got a revolution." And then, a flash drive. He plugged it in. The uncut video began to play. As Traoré's voice poured into the room, low, steady, cracking with grief, Tucker's smirk slowly faded. His breathing changed. His eyes narrowed. By the time the video ended, he wasn't blinking. Then, he did something no one expected. He picked up his phone, dialed a private number. "This is Tucker. I need to be in Ouagadougou next week." Silence. "Yes, I'm going to him." Why? Because for the first time in his career, he had been publicly defeated by honesty. And part of him wanted to understand why it hurt so much. Back in Burkina Faso, a young boy named Abdoulaye sat under a mango tree. He held a rusted radio close to his chest. It barely worked, crackling like fire. But today, he wasn't letting go, because the BBC had announced, President Ibrahim Traoré will deliver a message to the youth of the world. Abdoulaye leaned in. The radio hissed. Then, to every child listening, know this. Your skin is not a curse. Your land is not a weakness. Your truth is not too loud. Speak it, even when your voice shakes. Speak it, because the world only changes when the forgotten find the courage to be unforgettable. Abdoulaye closed his eyes. He wasn't just hearing a leader, he was hearing hope. And somewhere, children in America, France, Brazil, and Ghana heard the same words and cried in unison. They hadn't seen a man speak this way, not with anger, not with bitterness, but with the aching beauty of someone who had nothing left to lose but the chains around the world's heart. That night, across continents, candles were lit in silence. One message burned bright across every screen. This is the man who made the whole world feel again. If your heart is heavy right now, if you felt the truth in Traoré's words, if even one tear rolled down your face today, then don't let this story die here. Like this video so the algorithm doesn't silence it. Comment below. What part of the story shook you the most? Subscribe, because on this channel, we don't just tell stories, we wake the world up. Share this with someone who needs to remember how powerful words can be. And always remember, the truth may tremble, but it never breaks. Until next time, stay awake, stay human.